Hello and welcome to Edukemy's YouTube channel and editorial discussion for 25th April 2022. My name is Harsh Singh and in this video we shall discuss an editorial from The Hindu which is titled Fishing for Workable Solutions in the Palk Bay. The editorial speaks about the apprehensions, the fears of Sri Lanka and India and provide some solution for them. Now we will go beyond this and speak about the issues of Kachathivu Island, the problem of bottom trawling and what is the concept behind Indian fishermen going deep inside the Sri Lankan waters. If you like this initiative, share some love through likes, comments and shares. Let's discuss. The editorial starts by saying that the India-Sri Lanka Joint Working Group, it held its meeting and spoke about the various issues between both the countries. On one hand, Sri Lankan authorities said that the Indian fishermen in these trawler boats, they arrived deep inside the Sri Lankan waters beyond the India-Sri Lanka Maritime boundary, which is also called as IMBL, International Maritime Boundary Line, and they poach the fishes and get back to the Indian areas. Along with that, the accusation is also that we are using bottom trawling techniques, which is very much causing an issue to the fisheries and other resources which are present at the bottom of the sea. Along with that, there are concerns, valid concerns, which have been raised from India's side as well, which is that in Indian side, if we see Park Strait, Park Bay, and the Gulf of Mannar area, here the fishing areas are very shallow, and not only are they shallow, they have rocks and coral reefs, and these boats, they have a mandate that they can only fish beyond 3 nautical miles, and if they want to get into deep fishing, then have to have some minimum depth of the oceans. So by default they have to enter the international areas and they have to go beyond to fish. This is the humanitarian concern raised by the Indian trawlers and their association, right? Along with that, we see that there are competing economies between both the nations because both of them are into fishing in these areas. And there is an issue of Kachathivu Island as well. So let's discuss all of this one by one, but then starting with what the editorial has to mention. The editorial says that since the people here are Tamilian, both the sides, Indian and Sri Lankan people are Tamilian, they have similar culture. The language is similar, they have similar religion, and therefore one could adopt a more humanitarian approach to a crisis like this. Lately, there has been clashes between both the sides. Around 5 Indian fishermen and 2 Sri Lankan fishermen have died. Not only that, earlier these boats which were being impounded by the Sri Lankan authorities, right? These boats cost 40 to 60 lakh rupees each of them, and they were only being held and later given back to Indian fishermen. Now they are being auctioned in Sri Lanka. So this has irked the authorities and said that it is being said that there must be more humanitarian and humane grounds because this is livelihood. This is not purposeful. This is livelihood in question. So the editorial says that techniques like deep sea fishing could be utilized. Ships, rather than getting into Sri Lankan waters, get deeper into international waters, and those are the places where you could have the alternate methods. For example, long liner fishing. Long liner fishing means they have a long line, and this goes as much as 50 to 100 kilometers of distance. This distance are the lines of these fishing boats extended, and they could have shorter lines at say 100 feet distance and bait attached so that the fish gets caught. So in a few days this will be taken back and then the trawler boat can have a good catch. This is one method. The other method is diversifying. Rather than just fishing, let's utilize alternatives. For example, let's get into seaweed cultivation. This will help in creating food avenues for people. This will help in creating medicinal avenues. This will help in creating more fuel with the help of seaweed cultivation. This is possible and this can be done in the area. Not only that, rather than getting into fishing in the open areas, let's create sea ranches, just like we have cattle ranches where we cultivate cattle. These open inlets where fishes can breed, and when they grow they can be passed on from one of the inlets to the other, and that's how fish cultivation could be done. This is another way. Along with that, there must be fishing harbors developed. Don't get into each other's territory. Let us develop fishing harbors where all this activity can be done. This is possible. Along with that, if Sri Lankan authorities are the one which are supposedly killing the Indian fishermen, then we must have joint patrolling to increase the confidence between both the nations. And Sri Lanka must adopt a flexible approach. This is what the editorial mentions. So great insight. However, let's understand the article a little more deeply and understand some important issues of the illegal, unreported, and unregulated fishing, what is bottom trawling, and one important thing, that is smuggling that is happening in the garb of fishing here. Overfishing, the international maritime boundary line issue, the passage of Kachathivu Island from India to Sri Lanka, and what are the issues around. And one reality to suggest to people is that these Indian trawlers, which we feel are passing unknowingly, they are not passing unknowingly. All of them are, many of them are fitted with GPS, so they know very well where they are leading. And in fact, there are allegations from the Indian side. The politicians keep saying, let us have the Kachathivu Island back because this is ours, and we will have more fishing avenues. But this is not true. See, if you can see the small dot here, this is the Kachathivu Island, and this had been passed by India to Sri Lanka in 1970s after a contract between both the countries, and done very much legally. On the other hand, the fishermen not only come to Kachathivu Island, they get it farther inside into Sri Lankan territories. You can see this very well. So the issue is far more grave. To understand, let's discuss this. First of all, the formation of international maritime boundary line between India and Sri Lanka. If you can see in this image, there are two segments of this international maritime boundary line. The first segment was formed in the year 1974, right, through a modified equidistance formula. And the second part of this maritime boundary line was formed in the year 1976. This was the area of Gulf of Mannar and extending up to the island of Maldives. All right. So therefore, the demarcation happened in the 1970s, and there were different techniques used. Modified equidistance technique was used in this part, and then another technique called as simplified equidistance. For example, equidistance from both the mainland areas. That's how people demarcated. Now, there was one provision because of which exemption which gave exemption to the use of median line to determine the IMBL. That means there were places where IMBL was passing through median, so modified equidistance formula, and some exemption was given to this formula under UNCLOS treaty itself. So according to this, what was the reality was that Kachathivu Island, see, when you look into the image here further, the Kachathivu Island, when the formula was used, it was realized that Kachathivu lies around 1 mile inside the Sri Lankan territories, whereas it was please remember, said to belong to Indian area. So then both the sides said that it's fine, let's have Kachathivu with Sri Lanka itself. So this is how the agreement was made, so that the inland area, the territorial areas could be demarcated within the jurisdiction, and both the countries had to, they largely agreed with this. All right. So this was the issue. Now, uh, now, understanding that this was complete legitimate and a legal agreement between both the countries, let's understand a little more about Kachathivu. How would India give a complete island to Sri Lanka, and that too without discussing in the parliament? Let's understand this. See, first of all, this island has been uninhabited. It has not been inhabited, and this was said disputed territory between both the countries. So people say it belonged to India, some say it belonged to Sri Lanka, but it was a disputed territory between both the countries. And beforehand, primitive times and ancient times, medieval times, it belonged to kingdoms, right? So one kingdom, Ramanathapuram, Rameshwaram, this kingdom was the one which owned this island, and post this Britishers owned this. Now Ceylon was also a territory owned by Britishers, so was India. So both the sides administered this during British India, but then Ceylon, that is Sri Lanka, later recognized that India should be administering. This was during the times of Britishers only, but then later this dispute arose again, who should be taking care of this island, right? So in 1974, international maritime boundary line was drawn. Until then, both the countries said, mera hai, it's mine. But then when this was drawn, this was the time when, if you remember, this was the time when India was in a war with Pakistan, 1971. India also was conducting its a nuclear test, right? 1974, 1975, Smiling Buddha, right? And this was the time when India needed more favor, international favor. So Madam the Prime Minister that time, Indira Gandhi, she passed on this disputed, see, not Indian, but disputed island to Sri Lanka, and said that this could be yours. This is the modified agreement that we have, right? And Sri Lanka and Indian fishermen would also have the rights to dry their fishing nets, go to those places, but not fish in Sri Lankan territory, right? And there's also a church here, so use the church, and the church is still being used by both the sides, Indian and Sri Lankan people both. So now Indian side says later on, see, because Tamilian people are there and in Indian side, and they say that this was illegally transferred to Sri Lanka and we want to have this back. On the other hand, government of India says no, it was not illegally transferred. Why they say is it was an illegal transfer is because there is a Bero Bari Union case, according to which if any part of India is being transferred to another nation, it has to be passed in the Indian Parliament first. It has to be discussed and passed formally by the Parliament. However, the government says that no, it was never an Indian part. It was only disputed, right? So this is not unconstitutional. The passage is not unconstitutional. Sri Lanka also says no, no, we have got this and this is completely legal. Sri Lanka bolega hi, right? But this is not a problem. The cause of concern is not Kachathivu. It is only a political issue between both the countries, because if you see the fishermen, they are going far in interiors. No, they are going into far interiors, and it's not about Kachathivu Island, right? So let's understand why people are going further interior. See, uh, Tamil Nadu, there was a Tamil civil war also. 1980s to 2008, there was immense civil war in Sri Lanka, and this was against the minorities. Now, during these times, the minorities population in the northern and eastern area of Sri Lanka, Jaffna, etc., they were not allowed to get inside the international waters or even the waters to fish. Why? Because the government feared that people would get into smuggling of weapons, and there was also alleged smuggling because they said that the Indian Tamilians are helping the Sri Lankan Tamilians. So they would not allow the Sri Lankan fishermen to get into the for fishing, and they also controlled territory, so the Sri Lankan Navy would keep on patrolling, and this gave encouragement to the Indian fishermen to get inside the international waters. So earlier they were using the simple boats, right, and they consumed all the fishing areas, less regulations were there. Now Park Strait, Park Bay area, and later they started using mechanical boats as well, mechanized boats with more power, with more diesel capacity, with more engine capacity, and they started venturing out deeper just because they had to survive. They went it was not purposeful. Sri Lanka ke against we are going, just went inside, right? So but then exhausting marine resource in Indian part, right, the shallow lands, the availability of corals, and a lot of rocks, this urged them to cross the IMBL and get into what is called as illegal, unreported and unregulated fishing in Sri Lankan waters. They also started using bottom trawlers. Why? Because bottom trawler would help them have a better catch. Mechanized boat to get further interior or in the international waters. Now, some issues with mechanized boat that Sri Lankan authorities have mentioned is that when Indian authorities or Indian fishermen are using mechanical boats and we have simpler boats because we are poorer, so these mechanical boats are destructing, they are tearing apart uh, our fishing nets. This is only one. Bottom trawler, let's talk about it. Bottom trawling has been banned by many organizations, and bottom trawling is about a fishing trawler boat which has two edges, and these two edges, along with um, the fishing net, which is almost football size, this is put deep inside the ocean, in fact at the floor of the ocean, and these two edges are heavy edges, and these ensure that the whole fishing net is only at the bottom. So this is the bottom of ocean, the sea floor, and it is now capturing everything that comes on its way. And so when the trawler keeps moving, the whole fishing net also keeps moving, and it will just keep rubbing across the whole floor, the ocean floor. Imagine the complete marine life which is benthic, which is residing at the bottom. Not only do these prawns and fishes and other organisms which are eaten, that they get caught, but a lot of other organisms which are not eaten. Coral reefs, right? Simple example, coral reef been thrown back into this ocean after it was realized that it is of no use. These are the bottom trawlers, right? And look at the kind of destruction it causes, right? These are the bottom of the sea. And on the other hand, you know very well what is the diversity that ocean bottom has. So this is a very, very destructive activity which is scratching through the floor of the ocean. And a single passage of bottom trawling can cause 20% of the sea floor fauna and flora, right? Sea snakes, urchins, a lot of these organisms which are vital and not utilized for human consumption are still dying there, right? Examples are turtles and many other organisms, right? So first of all, the exceptional biodiversity which preserved itself, which was a stable yet fragile ecosystem, this is getting destructed because of trawling. Simple. So it is not just grounds, the bottom areas, not only ground for spawning, for the birth of prawns and shrimps, but other organisms also. right? And many of these organisms have lived for more than 100 years, right? Older than our grandparents. Imagine dada dadi se bhi bude, and then you're using these techniques to exploit the whole resources, and most of this resource is thrown back into the ocean. That's the terrible part, right? Just to have a better fishing catch. And this is happening in Sri Lankan waters right now. Indian waters we have already exploited and consumed it, so we are venturing into others water. This is what has been the allegation, and largely true as well, because our Indian waters, the catch is not very good, and we also not good at regulating the fishermen in Indian waters. Right now, India is going through a 2 month long ban. These are the times when fishes breed. So let's allow them to breed and grow, and then only catch the bigger fish. No, why catch a smaller fish? Let them breed and let them become bigger, and we'll fish them. So this is the issue, and India has started to discuss with Sri Lanka. That's why in news. Okay, so they say let's use pair trawling. That means instead of bottom trawling, let's use two trawlers and have the fishing net behind them and then pull. Right, and dumping back is also not a good option. Dumping back the unrealized potential into the sea, right? Because it has already died. Right now, earlier Sri Lankan authorities would only give warnings to people and return back the ships, but now they have started to drown the Indian ships. They've started to kill the Indian fishermen. So Indian people have started to say, give us Kachathivu back, because that is our island. But my dear friends, Kachathivu is only at the edge right here. But then if you enter far deeper, this is a different concern. It must be addressed differently, right? So this is a valid concern. India has acknowledged, yes, this is a concern. We will do something about this. Additional issue here is smuggling. Gold smuggling happens, right? Smuggling of arms happens from here, these areas, right? So they get into international waters and start assisting each other, and it can also happen from other areas also, right? There are many shops also in Tamil Nadu area where illegally gold is being sold, right? And both the sides politicians are exploiting this situation, right? And not to mention that almost 1/5 of the catch in Indian areas that comes from Sri Lankan waters, right? This is what has been alleged, right? So this is a vital issue of concern. See, in this image you can very well see these are the exclusive economic zone of Sri Lanka, right? And these are the territorial waters contiguous zone, 12 nautical miles, 12 and then up to 200 nautical miles, and boundary demarcated between both the countries. All right, so important. Moving ahead to understand further the issue of internationalization. See, it is not only Sri Lanka and India which are going through an issue like this. Philippines have also raised this issue against China. Mauritius against UK, right? Where Garcia Islands, Netherlands against Russia, that the bigger countries are exploiting their fishing potential and getting into our waters. And can you imagine what is the reason that we are able to exploit the fishing areas? It is because of the Indian resources, right? The resource facility that we have in Kois at Hyderabad, with the help of satellites and with the help of these sea boys, they understand which are the areas where there are more fishes present, and they immediately let the village resource centers know, and fishermen, they straight away take out their boats and they start to get to the interiors, right? So this is the technology that we are using to get into the further interior waters and being able to fish, right? So understanding the total issue, one is the issue of internationalization, and understanding what is the reason that we are able to catch with the help of inquires. Sri Lankan fishing, we have understood how we are utilizing their resources as well. The larger issue is to tackle bottom fishing, the bottom trawling issue, and how to do it by getting into further interior areas, by getting into alternate fishing economy or marine economy, right? By not getting into crisis of humanitarian issues, for example killing of people and drowning of boats. Bottom trawling is an issue, must be banned, right? Along with that, the Tamil waters must be utilized only for the legal activities, right? And the illegal transfer of Kachathivu, which cannot be revoked, the government says on both the sides. So we have understood all these issues, and this is how I would like to pass on a question to you, a very quick question, which is on India and Sri Lanka. The issue is on, yes, mention 5 points of contention between India and Sri Lanka fishing at Park Strait area, and four alternatives as well to be mentioned, four solutions for this issue. Now, if you like this video, share some love through likes, comments, and shares. And if you have some questions, just put it down in the comment section and we will ensure to get back to you. Thank you for watching.